पूरी यूनिट बंद कर दी।
The boot came out of nowhere. Specialist Maya Carter was kneeling on the concrete floor of the motor pool, trying to coax a stubborn drain plug loose on a Humvee, when Sergeant First Class Derek Harlan's steel-toed foot slammed into the side of her head. The impact sent her sideways, skull cracking against the oil-stained ground. For a second the world went white, then red, then silent except for the ringing in her ears. "Get up, Carter," Harlan snarled, voice thick with contempt. "I said I wanted this track done by 1600, not next fucking week." She tasted blood. Her Kevlar had flown off. Her ponytail had come half undone. Around her, the rest of 3rd Platoon pretended to be very busy with toolboxes and dipsticks. Nobody looked up. Nobody ever did. Maya pushed herself to her knees, vision swimming. "Yes, Sergeant," she whispered. That was February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2011. Forward Operating Base Falcon, Baghdad. She was 22 years old, 5'3" in boots, and the only woman in a maintenance platoon that prided itself on being old Corps. Harlan had been riding her since the day she arrived in country, singling her out for the worst details, the longest hours, the sharpest tongue. The others called it breaking her in. Maya called it surviving. She didn't report the kick. Who would she tell? The chain of command was Harlan's drinking buddies. The equal opportunity representative was a captain who golfed with the battalion commander. And besides, soldiers don't snitch. You suck it up, you drive on. That's what her dad, a retired gunner from the First Gulf War, had always told her. So she swallowed the blood, finished the Humvee, and went back to her chew with a headache that felt like a railroad spike behind her left eye. 3 days later she was medevaced to the cache with slurred speech and vomiting. Concussion. Possible traumatic brain injury. The flight nurse asked what happened. Maya stared at the ceiling of the Black Hawk and said, "I fell off the truck, ma'am." She spent 2 weeks in Landstuhl, then Walter Reed. When the worst of the vertigo passed, the Army gave her a profile that said no helmets, no running, no loud noises, and definitely no more deployments. They also gave her a Purple Heart nobody talked about, because friendly fire doesn't count if it's a boot. And then they sent her home to Fort Cavazos, Texas, to a rear detachment unit full of broken soldiers waiting for medical boards. That could have been the end of Maya Carter. It almost was. But 3 generals were about to show up and tear the entire place apart. Part 1. The Rear D Hell. Rear Detachment, 4th Sustainment Brigade, was purgatory in ACUs. The barracks smelled like mold and despair. The days were an endless cycle of room inspection, don't kill yourself formation, and pointless busywork. Maya's new platoon sergeant was a staff sergeant named Alvarez who spent most mornings hungover and most afternoons asleep at his desk. Her concussion symptoms came and went like storms. Some days she could barely read the pill bottle labels. Some nights she woke up screaming from dreams where Harlan's boot kept coming down, over and over. She tried to stay invisible. Then one Tuesday in July, a private first class named Kayla Ross, 19, freckled, fresh out of 8, showed up to the company with a black eye and a story she wouldn't tell. 2 days later Kayla was found in the laundry room with a belt around her neck. She lived, barely. The command called it a cry for help, and restricted everyone to the barracks for a week. Maya sat on her bunk that night staring at Kayla's empty bed across the bay. Something inside her cracked open. The next morning she walked into the battalion commander's office without an appointment. Lieutenant Colonel Reeves looked up from his computer, annoyed. "Carter, you know you're supposed to." "Sir," she said, voice shaking but steady, "I need to report an assault." Reeves leaned back. "From the deployment?" "Yes, sir. Sergeant First Class Harlan kicked me in the head. February. I have the medical records." The room went very quiet. Reeves sighed like this was just another paperwork headache. "Carter, you've been back 6 months. There are timelines on these things. I was unconscious half that time, sir." He started to say something else, then didn't. Instead he told her to come back with a sworn statement. She did. She wrote 15 pages. She attached the CT scans, the neurology reports, the photo the flight nurse had taken of the boot print bruise blooming across her temple. Reeves took the packet, frowned, and said he'd look into it. Nothing happened. August became September. The headaches got worse. Maya started forgetting words mid-sentence. She saw a civilian neurologist off-post who used terms like post-concussive syndrome and possible early-onset dementia. She was 23. Then one Thursday the entire brigade snapped to attention because the commanding general of 3rd Corps, 3 stars, a man whose name was on everyone's lips, showed up unannounced with the Corps Sergeant Major and the Army's top sexual assault response coordinator, a brigadier general nobody had ever seen outside of PowerPoint slides. They shut the gates. They locked the barracks. Phones were collected, and then they started pulling people into the chapel, one by one. Part 2. The Reckoning. Maya was sitting in the dayroom trying to read a magazine she couldn't focus on when 2 MPs came for her. Specialist Carter, come with us. She thought. This is it. They're chaptering me out for being broken. Instead they walked her to the chapel where 3 generals sat at a folding table like the Last Judgment. The 3rd Corps CG, Lieutenant General McCoy, did not look happy. He was a big man, former tanker, face carved out of oak and bad decisions in Iraq. He gestured to a chair. Specialist Carter, he said without preamble, tell me about Sergeant First Class Harlan. Maya's mouth went dry. She had rehearsed this moment in her head 1,000 times, but now the words stuck. Start with Valentine's Day, the sergeant major said, voice gentle for such a large man. So she started. She told them everything. The kick, the silence of her platoon, the lies she told the medics, the way Reeves had brushed her off, the way she still flinched when anyone raised their voice. When she finished, the chapel was silent except for the hum of the AC. General McCoy rubbed a hand over his face. Jesus Christ, he muttered. The SARC general, Brigadier General Vasquez, leaned forward. Maya, do you know why we're here? No, ma'am. 2 weeks ago a senator's aide called the Secretary of the Army. Seems someone mailed an anonymous packet, medical records, sworn statements, photographs, to every major news outlet and half of Congress. The return address was a P.O. box in Killeen, Texas. Maya felt the floor tilt. She hadn't sent anything. She'd barely figured out how to work the copier. Someone in your unit has been documenting assaults for 18 months, General Vasquez continued. They used your case as the cover sheet. Sergeant Major looked at her. We're here to clean house, specialist. Starting today. Part 3. The house cleaning. They shut the entire rear detachment down for 6 weeks. Investigators from SID and the Inspector General's office flew in. Every soldier was interviewed, some twice, some 3 times. Phones were imaged, hard drives seized, safe boxes cracked open. They found videos on Harlan's laptop, taken in Iraq, of him and 2 other NCOs laughing while they hazed female soldiers. One clip showed Maya on the ground after the kick, everyone standing around like it was a joke. They found text messages from Lieutenant Colonel Reeves telling the company commanders to handle the Carter situation internally, because we don't need another Fort Hood headline. They found a ledger in the first sergeant's desk tallying which female soldiers owed favors for good evaluations. 47 soldiers, enlisted and officers, were removed from duty in the first 10 days. Harlan was flown in from Afghanistan in handcuffs. Reeves lawyered up the second SID walked into his office. The story broke nationally the same week. Army generals dismantle. Toxic. Unit after boot-to-head cover-up. Maya's boot print bruise photo ran on the front page of the Washington Post, eyes blacked out for her protection. She didn't want protection. She wanted people to see. Part 4. The Letter. 3 months later Maya sat in the 3rd Corps headquarters courtroom gallery and watched Derek Harlan plead guilty to aggravated assault, maltreatment, and half a dozen other charges. He cried when the prosecutor played the video. He looked smaller without his rank. The judge sentenced him to 8 years at Leavenworth and a dishonorable discharge. After the gavel fell, General McCoy found Maya in the hallway. Specialist Carter, he said, I owe you an apology on behalf of the United States Army. She started to say, no, sir, you fixed it, but he held up a hand. No, we didn't fix anything. You did, and we should have listened the first time. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This came to my office yesterday. No return address. Maya took it with shaking hands and unfolded it. It was handwritten on lined notebook paper. Maya, you don't know me. I was in the bay the night Kayla almost died. I saw what they did to you in Iraq. I was too scared to speak up then. I kept copies of everything. Every text, every video, every time they hurt someone and laughed about it. I mailed the packets the day I etched. I figured if I was finally getting out, I might as well burn the place down on my way out the door. You were the bravest person I ever met, and they kicked you in the head for it. Because of you, my little sister might join the army one day and not have to be afraid. Thank you. There was no signature. Maya read it 3 times, tears running down her face. General McCoy pretended not to notice. Epilogue. 10 years later. Captain Maya Carter, Medical Service Corps, stood on the stage at the Sergeant Audie Murphy Club induction ceremony at Fort Cavazos, the same post where she once hid in her room with migraines and shame. Her TBI still gave her headaches when it rained. She still flinched sometimes when someone moved too fast. But she had finished her degree on the Army's dime, commissioned through OCS, and spent 6 years as a physical therapist helping soldiers put themselves back together after IEDs and falls and bullets. The post had a new name now, Fort Cavazos, not Hood, and a lot of new rules. Sharp briefings weren't jokes anymore. Commanders got fired for looking the other way. And every year on Valentine's Day the installation held a resilience run in honor of the soldiers who spoke up when it cost them everything. Maya looked out at the formation, hundreds of sergeants in dress blues, and thought about the girl who once laid on a motor pool floor tasting blood and believing no one would ever come. Then she thought about the 3 generals who shut the whole place down because someone, somewhere, decided one kick in the head was one too many. She smiled, touched the small scar hidden under her hairline, and began to speak. Leadership, she said, isn't about how hard you can kick someone when they're down. It's about who you become when you decide to help them stand back up. The applause was loud and long, and somewhere in the back row, a 19-year-old private with fresh boots and wide eyes wiped away a tear, clutched the pamphlet about reporting assault, and decided, right then, that the Army could be better than the stories she'd heard. Because Maya Carter had proved it could. And that was the day the boot print finally stopped hurting.